Okay, so we're going to look at cognitive dissonance theory. It will come in three parts. If you want to email me, I always think it's important to start off looking at learning outcomes. Any assessments I give will be hardwired to the learning outcomes. And essentially, in unpacking this theory, we need to understand what I meant by the key concepts in the theory: cognitions, consonance, dissonance, rationalizing reasons, and attitude change. You'll need to be able to offer some everyday examples to demonstrate a good handle on the theory. Likewise, to unpack a number of studies that have explored cognitive dissonance, and to be able to offer at least one application. It's worth making a note that at university, what gets students into the 2-1 bracket or the first bracket is their ability to be able to think critically. And at its simplest, that can be broken into 3 elements. One of them is to be able to offer some strengths and weaknesses, sometimes called criticisms and contributions, of a theory or of the studies linked to the theory. The second is to be able to dip into different areas of psychology and show how they are kind of connected. So we're looking at social psychology here, but you could link it to cognitive psychology, maybe to evolutionary psychology. So try to develop, as you gain more understanding of psychology, how these different branches or domains within psychology, the big theories, the big perspectives, how they actually can be brought together to explain a particular aspect of behaviour. That's thinking eclectically. And the third element is that if you can offer an application of the theory, in a sense, the acid test of any perspective or any theory is, does it work? Can we apply it in a way that helps us understand human behaviour better, or that might offer a good strategy for processing information, for making decisions, that kind of thing. Okay, this theory was developed by Leon Festinger, and an awful lot of psychology arrives at results that frankly often fit with what common sense would predict. And that's okay if that psychology has been done systematically. It's been studied, human behaviour has been studied systematically, rigorously, scientifically. That means with representative samples, studied in ways that can enable replication. And whatever results we arrive at from that approach, then that's good research, that's good science. And sometimes some of those results, interestingly, are counter what common sense would predict. They're counterintuitive. And Festinger's theory is an interesting one, not least because it offers us insights that are the opposite of what common sense would predict. Now, essentially, he talks about cognitions, and cognitions can essentially refer to our beliefs, our values, or our attitudes. And when our attitudes and our behaviour are consistent with one another, we say they are consonant. Sometimes, however, we may act in a way that is inconsistent with our attitudes, aka our values or our beliefs. And you would think from a common sense point of view that you would come back into line. But what Festinger finds is that sometimes, rather than revert back into acting in a way that's consistent with their attitudes, sometimes people actually, oddly, will change their attitudes, or they may find some kind of rationalizing reason to explain why they're acting in a way that's counter to their attitudes. Just want to give you a couple of points on Festinger himself. He was a significant social psychologist, but he started out in psychology studying cognitive psychology. And after his period as a social psychologist, he later returned to cognitive psychology. And in the end, he left psychology to pursue a profession in archaeology. His cognitive dissonance theory is his most significant contribution. He received the Scientific Contribution Award from the Distinguished Scientific Contribution Award from the American Psychology Association in 1959. And he is the 5th most cited psychologist in the 20th century. The 4 that precede him are Freud, the psychoanalyst, Skinner, the behaviourist, Albert Bandura came out with what's called social learning theory or role modelling, and looked at other areas too, and the Swiss child developmental psychologist Jean Piaget. Okay, so essentially what we're saying to get a handle on this theory is he's arguing that if we act in a way that runs counter to our attitudes, then often we'll employ rationalizing reasons, or we'll change our attitude rather than do the obvious thing, which is to change our behavior. Now, where there is an inconsistency between our attitudes and our behavior, we experience dissonance. That's any negative emotion that's generated by this inconsistency, and it may manifest as any or all of these different types of negative emotions. This is a useful template to understand the theory. The theory he wrote in a book given the unimaginative title, A Theory of Cognitive Dissonance. But essentially, if you can get your head around this idea of what's the attitude, how is the person acting, if there's an inconsistency, they experience this negative emotion, and they try to rid themselves of this by rationalizing or by changing their attitudes. Sometimes they have the choice of changing their behavior, and you might think, well, why don't people do that? Surely that's the obvious thing to do. Well, the reason why they don't is that actually often it's easier to rationalize or to change one's attitude. It requires more effort to change one's behavior. And that one subtle message to take away from this is that as humans, we employ the least amount of effort. We tend to take the route of least resistance. And that's true in life, and that's true in how we process information. And so what we tend to find is, given we have only a limited amount of effort to invest, what we will do is we'll try and invest this effort wisely. We'll try and invest to arrive at the decision, arrive at the answer with the least amount of effort. In this case here, rationalizing, changing one's attitude requires less effort usually than changing one's behavior. So here's our first example. Imagine that you've just invested in a new car, and here it is. You're very pleased, you signed the dotted line, committed yourself for the next 2 years to pay off the loan for the car. But very soon you hear about the stunning features of its cheaper rival. So you're now thrown into a state of dissonance. The attitude is spend wisely, but the behaviour, you haven't. So you experience dissonance. You're annoyed with yourself, you're frustrated, it's possibly eating you up. So you could square the circle, you could try and get rid of this dissonance by coming out with some rationalising reason. And typically what we find with people who buy things like cars and they discover this is they kind of tune into evidence that fits with the decision they made. They tune into evidence that affirms all the good features of the car they've bought, and they actively tune out, they discredit, they poo-poo the evidence that doesn't fit in with the decision they made. The evidence on the features of the other car, they'll readily accept examples of the car this competing car falling short in some way. Or they might change their attitude. If the attitude is spend wisely, they might change the attitude by saying something like, I should treat myself from time to time. You deserve it. On that, on this last one here, I want to give an example from my holiday in Florida last year with my wife and 3 daughters. And one of the endearing qualities to me as a Yorkshireman in my wife is that she spends wisely. We were at a retail outlet centre in Florida. I was doing the male thing of guarding the bags whilst my 3 daughters and their mum went off shopping. In the end, I picked up all the bags, I tracked them down, and I found that my wife was in a shop and she was paying for a Louis Vuitton bag. She already has many of these bags, and when I realised when I was there is that she wasn't just paying for 1, not 2, but 3 of these expensive bags. And I said to her, what are you doing? Why are you buying 3? You've already got loads of these at home. And her answer is they were a great deal. I'm gonna sell some on eBay. And as a psychologist and as a husband, I knew that was code for I'm keeping them. And in her mind, probably she was treating herself. That was her way of squaring the circle from from acting in the way she normally does to spend wisely. I want to finish with 2 clips that maybe give us some idea about what dissonance feels like.
So we sold the house.
Did you use Purple Bricks?
An online agent for a place like this?
No, they're genuine agents, real people. You just don't pay crazy amounts in commission. Could have saved thousands.
There it is. Real misery. The misery you feel when you pay too much in commission and get nothing more for your money.
You, could have bought your new house with Purple Bricks, too.
Whether you're buying or selling, go to purplebricks.com. Save yourself from real misery.
Oh, look, there's one of those Purple Bricks real estate agents. I thought they were just online. No, they're proper real estate agents. They're real people. Oh, they only charge a fixed fee.
What, no commission?
No commission. Huh. Well, did you not use them to sell your old place?
Ah, commisery. The misery you feel when you spend thousands on commission but got nothing more for your money. Save yourself from commisery at purplebricks.com.au.